Welcome to Audio Pizza and a look at editing podcasts in Reaper, a Reaproducer episode. Hey guys, and welcome to this Reaproducer episode of Audio Pizza. It's been a long time since I've done an episode of Reaproducer, and over the years, one of the most common questions I've received is how I put together a podcast. So what I wanted to do today on this Reaproducer episode is just go through the workflow that I usually go through when producing one of the Audio Pizza podcasts. I won't cover every aspect in detail. If you're brand new to Reaper, there might be a few things that I mentioned that aren't perfectly clear. I will assume that you have some familiarity already with using Reaper. So I'll discuss briefly how we record, go through some of the basic settings, show a few examples of editing in Reaper, take a look at some of the custom actions I've got set up, and also show you how to set up your own custom actions. We'll add a little music and do some volume automation on that. I'll also take a little bit of a look at organizing the project, some of the effects I use, and I'll discuss how to change levels at different places in the project, and setting chapter markers prior to rendering so that you have those chapters in your final MP3. So quite a few things, but also heaps that I won't be covering in this episode. So this is not a beginner podcast, but by the same token, I'll try and cover things in as much detail as I can without taking up too much of your time. So firstly, the actual recording process. What we tend to do is get Sean and Kayaka and myself on a Zoom call, and then we all make local recordings. So I normally use Audio Hijack, and each person just records their local end individually so that they've got a good pristine recording of their part. Typically though, we just count it in 1, 2, 3 and we all start recording. So we've got individual files already fairly well synced, ready to go for editing. Now, let's get into Reaper.
No tracks.
So I've got a blank session here, no current project. I'm going to actually save this blank one.
Save project dialog. Save project. Save as. Tags. Selection replaced. ARP app.
AP test.
Test. Space.
Now having a look through here.
Text tag editor. Edit text. Back dim. Back forward dim. Column view. Change the item grouping. Projects. Where. Pop up button.
In my default location, projects.
Show list options. Search text. Sidebar. Type vertical split. Column view. Browser. File type. Reaper project files. Create subdirectory for project.
Create subdirectory.
Unticked. Copy all media into project
Okay,
directory
I'm
using.
just going to jump to the bottom
Save button.
and save.
Save. AP new project button. Dimmed.
So I've saved
No tracks. No
this
tracks.
blank project with nothing in it yet, and I've done that save first to create that subfolder. So now when I put files into the project, they'll automatically be saved into that subfolder. That's part of the basic Reaper preferences you can set up. So if I jump over to Finder now.
Audio Hijack. Finder. Finder. Example. KWAV. Waveform audio. GWAV. Waveform audio.
Here we go. Now I've got a G file.
KWAV. Added to selection 2 items selected. SWAV. Added to selection 3 items selected.
3 files. Garth, Sean, Kayaka.
Copy 3 items.
Copy those.
Reaper. AP test.
Come across to Reaper.
0.0007.
I'm just going to paste those 3 files.
Dialog. /users/garth/desktop/. Insert multiple media items. Dialog.
Now Reaper will ask how I want to import those files. I've got a few options here, and the default one, the first one, is the one I will want.
Insert multiple media items. Selected. Same time position on separate tracks. Radio button.
Same time position on separate tracks. That's the one I want, but we've also got
Sequential time positions on a single track. Radio button.
put all the files one after another on the same track,
Same time position in fixed lanes on a single track. Radio button.
or in lanes on a single track.
OK. Default button. OK. Default button. Building peaks. Window. Cancel. Dimmed. AP test. Dimmed text.
Alrighty, so we now have those 3 files, those 3 recordings, into the Reaper project. Now, as long as we've all started recording at the same time, these files are ready for editing, but sometimes I may need to nudge things around a little bit by picking the particular item and using comma and period to move it. I would do this with ripple turned off, so only the item I had selected was being moved, and you can't actually move the items initially to the left as they're already right at the beginning of the project. You may have noticed G, S, and K. I've renamed the files to those single letters just so that when I'm moving around through the items on these tracks, it just cuts down the verbiage, makes it as short as possible, basically.
K1 item. G1 item. Master.
I'll just show a couple of the basic settings I change for editing voice rather than music.
Apple menu.
Go up in here.
Reaper, file, menu. Edit menu, can't undo, dimmed, view menu.
View menu.
Tick, master track,
Down
command shift option.
to
M. Temp time unit for ruler, submenu.
time unit for ruler.
Time unit for ruler, submenu. Tick, minutes, seconds.
And have that set to their minutes and seconds.
Editing RPP, empty.
If I go into project settings with Option Enter on the Mac or Alt Return on Windows.
Project settings, dialog. Project settings. Hertz, 48,000. Hertz, if unticked. Project BPM, 60.000. Time signature, 60. Contents /4. Contents select.
So a tempo of 60 with a time signature of 60/4 means that when I move by bar, it moves by a minute with the page up and down, and command page up and down will move me by a second. So silly settings from a musical perspective maybe, but makes it useful for editing podcasts. The other thing I quickly change is here.
Time base for items /envelope /markers. Time pop-up button.
Move that one to time.
Save as default project settings button.
At the bottom we have the Save as Default Project Settings button, which will do just that. It also saves the time ruler in the View menu. Even though that wasn't actually in here, it will make that the default as well for new projects. If you use this
Save as default project.
Save as Default Projects button.
AP10.
Now the first thing I'm going to do is get these volumes all to about the same level.
1 is 0.00.
So I'm going to select one of the items. I'm going to do Command A
3 items selected.
to extend that selection to all the items. Note I'm selecting the items, not the tracks. Now I'm going to do Shift U.
SWS/BR, normalize loudness, window, 23, content.
Normalize loudness, and it lets us normalize either the selected items or the selected tracks.
Nuffs, pop-up button, 23, content selected.
Set to
22-2.
minus 23.
3, nuffs, pop-up button, normalize default button, cancel button, normal nuffs, pop-up button.
I'll just check back
23,
here.
content selected 2, tracks, pop-up button.
Tracks, I'm going to change this to items.
Menu, tick, track items. Items. 2. Items, pop 2, 23, nuffs, pop, normalize default button.
And normalize.
SWS/BR, SWS/BR, normalizing loudness. Close button, 93%, progress indicator. AP test, modified, Reaper version 720. S1 item, K1 item, G1 item.
All right, let's just have a quick listen.
Recording!
Boosh, boosh.
There we go. Yes.
All right. Just pause there. We are now all recording, and we're at a level that we can easily hear what's going on, and about the same levels. Now, with this technique of normalizing everything to minus 23 LUFS, there's every chance that stuff is going to be coming through higher than 0 dB, so peaking. Really good idea to put a limiter on your master track at this point as well. So now I just want to find the bit where we actually start the podcast.
Pounds, rubles, and the like.
Aha. And back a bit.
Price of being blind. Pizza, where 2, 1. Hello and welcome. 2, 1.
Pause there, and then use the custom action to select from edit cursor to beginning of project. Shift home.
Set selection start.
And
Content
delete.
of time selection removed.
So I got rid of all the rubbish at the front.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Audio Pizza, where we're going to talk about the price of being blind. And in price.
Again, I'm going to get a selection for all items. So I'm going to pick one of them
1 G 0.000 second.
and do a Command
3
A.
items selected.
Get all 3 items. Now I'm going to do Control Accent.
30 points.
And I think it's that on both Windows and Mac. And it's just
Threshold.
this
Auto trim /split items.
auto trim /split items dialog that we want to go into.
Threshold. 30.0. Content selected. Edit text.
So we have a threshold set to minus 30 in this dialog. You'll notice in a number of these dialogues, the minus doesn't read out. VoiceOver is just reporting it as a whole number, but it is actually a minus. What we're using this dialog to do is automatically split up those items into all the sections where we're talking to make them easier to work with later. So once I run this process over those 3 items that we have, the 3 tracks, we'll have hundreds of items on each track. Anytime the recording falls below 30 dB on the particular track, Reaper will remove an item for that section and leave an item for when that person is talking. So have a look at some of the other settings I've got in here. These are not default.
Hysteresis. 10.0. Content selected. Edit text.
Hysteresis of 10.0, because sometimes when you're talking, you sort of get quieter as you go through. It's another minus 10 dB below the 30. So if I trail off and I get quieter while I'm talking, and and I fall below 30 dB, Reaper won't sort of cut that bit out. I'll have to fall down to minus 40 dB before it will start thinking, okay, that's silence now. So basically, just helps not cut off the end of words.
Ignore silence shorter than 1000. Content selected.
Ignore silence shorter than a second.
MS.
Now, I'm not going to explain every one of these settings, but I'll let you see some of the values I have in here.
Make non-silent clicks no shorter than 1000. Content select MS. Leading pad. 50. Content selected. Edit MS. Trailing pad. 200. Content selected. Edit text. MS. Tick fade pad. Auto adjust snap offset to peak value in the first. 50. Content select MS. 0 to disk mode. Split and remove silent areas. Pop up button.
This one's important, split and remove silent areas. So that's what it's going to do. It's going to split and remove the silent areas.
Unticked. Split group items at times of selected items. Ticked. Preserve timing of non-silent areas.
And this is the other one that's important to make sure we check as well.
Unticked. Ticked. Preserve timing of non-silent areas.
Preserve timing of non-silent areas. If I didn't tick this, it would all sort of shuffle all the items up into one big, bit of talking. So everything would come out of sync very quickly.
Unticked. Run signal through track effects for detection. Process default button.
And I'm going to process.
AP text.
Alrighty, that's done. Now let's have a quick look at how many items we have on each of these tracks.
S152 items. K324 items. G347 items.
All split up. Now I'm on
G347 items.
my track here. Let me just check how Ripple is set.
Ripple tracks.
Okay, we're going to turn that off.
Ripple off.
Right. So I'm on my track.
Hello and welcome to
But
another
Hijack
edition
is
of Audio
talking
Pizza,
on his
where
track.
we're going to talk about, and in price I mean dollar,
I've just gone Command right arrow to jump through to the first item on my track,
and in price I mean
which is me
dollars,
making some
pounds,
noise in the
rubles,
background
and the
before
like.
I was ready to talk. So I can just
One item
delete
removed.
that. Now the first item on my track
1 G 11.592 seconds.
is here. It's me saying rubles. Okay, so let me just go from
price of being blind, and in price I mean dollars, pounds, rubles, and the like.
rubles.
Text.
Okay, so I'm going to get my rubles.
Master. G346 items. 1 G 11.592 seconds.
That's the first one. I'm going to cut it
1 item
there
removed.
Rubles and the like.
and just move it forward a bit.
1 item added.
So Command X to cut and Command V to paste.
Pounds, rubles, and the like.
Rubles. Now we can hear Kaika has a little
K324 items.
breath here.
One.
Now, let me see.
1 item selected.
Yes, there's an item here. So I know that breath is all part of the one item, and I just need to cut the end of that item off to get rid of it. Now I could split that and delete the item, but what I'm going to do instead is use this action. I'll hit F12
Shortcut help on.
to show it to you. Control-Shift on the Mac or Windows-Shift on Windows. Comma,
Item edit. Trim left edge of item to edit cursor.
trim left edge of item to edit cursor. Period,
Item edit. Trim right edge of item to edit cursor.
trim right edge of item to edit cursor. So
Shortcut help off.
this item that I've got here of kayakers.
12.135 seconds.
Okay, so if I back up a bit here, that's the part I want to get rid of. That. So
1 item selected.
I've got that item selected. I'm going to hit Control-Shift full stop.
Trim right edge of item to edit cursor 0 minutes 11.330 seconds.
And it's just trimmed, sort of moved the edge of that item back to there, so that now the little breath is gone. So some of the benefits of using the trim left and right edge of item to edit cursor is that it doesn't care about your ripple state. Think of it in very much the same way as using Command and Option with the comma and period to grow and shrink the left and right edge of an item. They're basically doing exactly the same thing. The keystrokes on Command and Option with comma and period will do it by 1 pixel, so will depend upon your zoom level, whereas Control-Shift will shift the relevant edge to the edit cursor. So if you've got your edit cursor in the middle of an item and you hit trim right edge to edit cursor, it will cut the end off, and the opposite if you hit trim left edge to edit cursor, it'll cut the beginning off. Put the edit cursor before the item and use that same keystroke. It'll grow the beginning of the item back, and again grow the end of the item back if you want to by using trim right edge to edit cursor and having your edit cursor after the item. A really quick way to work with items rather than lots and lots of growing and shrinking of edges. as you've seen, some of the benefits of having split these tracks up into heaps of items is we can now then really easily work with them. If there's a little cough in the background, I don't have to go through and cut it out manually. I can just navigate to it and hit delete and it's gone. It's already cut out, okay? So it makes that sort of edit really quick. If we're talking over each other, I can sort of nudge stuff around very easily as well, because once again, the items are already split out into separate little parts of talking.
Northeast corridor.
So let's just go along here until we need to do some other editing.
Dream of hurricanes, rain, floods. But anyway, I'm sure in the UK things are much better under the well-built shed of Sean. Sean, how are you over there?
I'm very well, thank you, Kayaker. That was a great intro, by the way. It was very NPR. It was
So what I might do there is just jump to the Kayaker laughing bit.
G346 items. Master. G300, K324 items.
Here we're already on Kayaker's track. So I've paused at that point. I'm just going to command left arrow to go back.
3K 39.545.
And
Kayaker. That was a great intro, by the way. It was very...
so I'm going to trim it down a bit
Trim
first.
edge of item, edit cursor 0 minutes 40.
And then I'm just going to turn down his laugh a little bit.
Take +1, +9, +8, +7.43.
So command down arrow or control down arrow on Windows will nudge the take volume up or down. So effectively in this case, as each item only has the one take in it, we're turning down that item.
Great intro, by the way. It was very
Take +,
Take
4.43.
it down a bit more.
That was a great intro, by the way. It was very NPR. It was leaning into the mic. It was a lovely, soft, gentle voice. I'm really impressed. Well done, you. Now then, let's get to it. I have no idea what we're talking about today, but Kayaker is going to intro.
I'll get rid of my laugh.
G346 items. 4G51.
I have no idea what we're...
One item removed.
I have no idea what we're talking...
Rain, floods.
And there's my laugh there too.
Take +,
Turn that one down a
6.22.
bit as well.
Rain, floods. But
Take +, 2.22.
rain,
So we'll leave
floods.
the laugh in there, but I just want to make it easier to hear the main person speaking.
But anyway, rain, United States, North.
I've backed up again. I noticed that the one I was working on was number 4, so there's obviously 3 items before it. And here's
United States,
rubles.
United States.
There's an item just there.
One item removed.
Get deleted. It's just some little background noise that, with those settings that I had for the thresholds and the hysteresis has been left there.
United States.
So
That Garth is here. He's had a drink and he is in Australia. What more do you need
Okay.
to know? Hello, Garth.
K3S 152 items.
now another keyboard shortcut I use a lot, and this one is not in the default key map. On the Mac I have it set to control left and right arrow. On Windows I use control alt left and right arrows, but obviously you can set your own actions wherever you like. And I'll hit F12.
Shortcut help on. Transport. Rewind a little bit. Transport. Fast forward a little bit.
Rewind and fast forward a little bit. Super useful when navigating in this kind of project where you want to move around just a bit, skip backwards and forwards quickly without actually changing item focus, which is handy. So I like the workflow of keeping my hands down on the arrow keys and just moving backwards and forwards with those.
Shortcut help off.
All right, now let's get back to editing.
Here. He's had a drink and he is in Australia. What more do you need to know? Hello, Garth.
I'm slightly speechless at this. Okay, so there's a great big gap there. I was slightly speechless. If I go to my track here,
K324 items. G344 items. 5G 1 minute 8.
okay. So I'll skip back a bit. Now, I'm going to pause in the middle of this great big silence.
Hello, Garth.
So I've just paused there.
Shortcut help on.
So I've got another custom action that I use, which is called
Custom. Set time selection between items across tracks and preview.
Set Time Selection Between Items Across Tracks and Preview.
Shortcut help off.
So what it's going to do, with my focus starting between 2 items, the end of Sean's item on his track, the beginning of my item on my track, and there's a big gap in between, or any gap at all, it's going to move that edit cursor to the end of his item, set a beginning of a time selection, move it then forward to it hits the edge of another item, so the beginning of mine, set the end. It's then going to jump back before that time selection and start playback in preview mode, so the Alt space or Option space preview. With the one keystroke, it will create that time selection and show me how it sounds. I'm then already in preview mode. I can adjust that time selection, and when I'm happy with it, hit delete and move on with the edit. So I'll hit Control Backspace, which is where I've set this action.
And
6.437
he's in
seconds.
Australia. What more do you need to know? Hello, Garth.
I'm slightly speechless. And I've just paused. I'm happy with how that sounds. I've got rid of that silence.
Contents of time selection removed.
So I'll hit delete. If I move
37K
here with text entry.
Okay.
That's another section. I'll go back one.
36K last 7 minutes, 6.267 seconds.
Wrong. Okay, so I've just paused. All of that beginning of that section we want to get rid of, but let me just see exactly where we want to go to.
I would argue.
Yeah, we're already in the right spot. So Control Shift, comma.
Trim left edge of item, edit cursor 7 minutes.
Now if I jump back.
Wrong. I would argue that.
There we go. So Sean starts talking there as
S152
well.
items. 18 S1 9.9.
Argue that.
Let's get rid of Sean.
1 item removed.
Back again. Now, I've shown you the custom keystroke I had. Let's do a bit of old style editing as though we don't have any custom actions. In itself inherently wrong. Pause. Start time selection with the left
Set
bracket.
selection start.
I would
Pause there, back up.
argue.
There we are. Now I'm going to show another keystroke here, which is on the slash key.
Shortcut help on.
I'll just turn that on for a second.
Scrub. Toggle loop segment scrub edit cursor.
Toggle loop segment scrub at edit cursor.
Scrub. Toggle loop segment scrub edit cursor.
Let's have a look at how this actually works. Might make more sense than the title does initially.
Shortcut help off.
So if I hit that, okay,
I would argue that.
I'll just stop again. So what it's doing is creating a tiny little loop section. Now, I can't remember the length, about 200 milliseconds, I think. It goes from just before the edit cursor to the edit cursor and loops. So if I go into that mode and then I start arrowing around, if I arrow forward, you can hear we're getting more and more of the first word. If I arrow back, okay, so now I know I'm just before he starts talking. My edit cursor is the end of this loop. Arrow forward, and we've got the very beginning of that word, so I'm going to arrow back one.
I would argue.
Right at the beginning of that word. So that's another way of easily being able to hear where you've got your edit cursor and making sure you're in the right position. We start at the beginning of our time selection. I'm going to hit the right bracket to go to the end of the time selection.
Set selection end.
My edit cursor will now be back at the beginning of the time selection. That's the behavior I've got set up in Reaper preferences. I'm going to jump back a little bit more from there, hit Option space. The opinion is in itself inherently wrong.
I would argue that.
Now, I just want to go over adjusting time selection and cover off the keystrokes again.
Wait, when you say the trek lost,
Right, so we can hear Sean has done a little bit of a tiny little double talk there. I'll just go back to it.
wait, when you say
This bit coming up now.
thus
the. So let's say we want to get that out. I'm at the beginning of that section now, roughly, so I'm going to start the time selection.
The set selection start.
And then I've gone a bit too far.
the trek.
So scrub back and press play and stop again to check where I was. And I'll hit the end of the time selection.
Set selection end.
So I'm going to jump back a little bit further and hit Option space.
The track.
Okay, wait. When you say the trek lost,
Okay, now that's pretty good. That's actually kind of what we wanted to achieve. But let's say we wanted to adjust that a bit, and I'll sort of ruin it and bring it back into place, showing these keystrokes.
Shortcut help on.
So Option with the left bracket,
Time selection, nudge left edge left.
Option with the right bracket,
Time selection, nudge left edge right.
nudge the left edge either further left or further right. So nudge the beginning of the time selection closer to the beginning of the track or closer to the end of the track. And with the Command key, with the left bracket,
Time selection, nudge right edge left.
nudge right edge left,
Time selection, nudge right edge right.
nudge right edge right. So moving the end of the time selection either closer to the beginning of the track or back further. Now these modifier keys are swapped around on Windows, so the beginning of the time selection you do with the Control key and the end of the time selection you would move with the Alt key.
Shortcut help off.
Let's get again into preview mode, or play skipping time selection. I just sort of tend to call it preview mode. Now I'm just going to adjust the zoom to make the effect of these keystrokes a little bit more evident.
48, 40.33.27, 23.3, 19.4 pixels slash 16.2 pixels slash second.
So the number we're hearing there is number of pixels per second. Each time we tap these keystrokes and the same as the arrow key, we'll be moving by 1 pixel. So the smaller the number, the bigger the time.
13.5 pixels/second.
13 pixels per second. So each second of audio is broken up into 13 pixels. 13 taps would take us through 1 second. If I increase that,
60, 19, 20, 20, 30, 40, 40, 50, 69.4 pixels/second. 83, 207.4 pixels/second.
we're up to 200 pixels per second. So each tap of it will only take us 1/200th of a second.
120 pixels/second.
To make it fairly obvious, we're going to go down,
30, 23, 19, 6, 13.5 pixels/second.
back down to 13. So fairly big increments. And I'm adjusting that with the dash and equals between 0 and backspace. Now let's option space and then we'll start adjusting our time selection.
The track.
Okay, wait. When you say
So the first thing I'm going to do is move it
in
option
what way? Are we
left.
just comparing the... Wait. When you say the trek lost... Wait. When you... The trek... Wait. The trek lost...
Okay, we've got
In
rid of
what
the
way?
when as
Are
well.
we just comparing
Now
the
I'll do
GPS
option right.
performance, or are you saying
So
it
I'll be
lost
moving the
because
beginning of the
it
time
was a
selection later.
singular... Wait. When you say the trek lost... Wait. When you say the trek lost... Wait. When you say the trek lost...
Okay.
In what way?
Now
are we just
let's
comparing
change
the
the end of the
GPS
time selection.
performance,
So
or are you
command,
saying it lost
and let's make
because
it shorter
was
at
a
first.
Wait. When you say the trek... Wait. When you say the trek lost...
And now
when
moving
you
it back later.
Wait. When you say...
We've totally got rid
when
of
you
the word
say-
lost now as well.
In what way? Are we just comparing the GPS
Okay,
performance,
so
or are you
command
saying it
left
lost
bracket
because
will
it was
remove
a
the end of that
singular,
time selection back
single-use
again.
device? Wait, when you say lost, wait, when you say the trek lost,
Noticed I left it playing and kept on adjusting, just so that I didn't have to get back into that mode again. Now let's do another little bit of editing, this time with, again, some of the custom actions I've got set up. And I'll just show you what they
Shortcut help
are.
Custom, set selection start and play.
And
Custom, set time selection end and preview edit. Shortcut help off.
so, set start of selection and play, so it just combines those two keystrokes. And the other one, set end of time selection and preview edit. So it does the same thing as I did earlier, where it sets the end of the time selection and jumps back before the time selection and starts preview mode. Let's look at that in practice.
and don't even
Yes.
have to think about it. Excuse me.
right.
Don't even
Yes.
have to think about it.
So I'll pause there, beginning of where Sean coughs. Control left bracket to set the beginning of the time selection and start playback.
Excuse me. So, I mean, I suppose
Okay, let's just go to there. We won't worry about being too exact in this demo. So I'm now going to hit the Windows right bracket, which is where I've got it set, or Control right bracket.
fluently, and don't even
Yes.
have to think about it. I suppose that's... You could almost argue this
Let's
is
just
all
adjust it a little bit,
agenda
actually.
to think about it. I suppose that's...
Okay, and hit delete. So you'll notice when I hit delete there, we didn't get any feedback. And there wasn't a lot of feedback from Osira throughout the use of those actions. When I've built the custom actions, I've put in a very helpful little action that has been included in Osira. Let me find it.
Actions, window, search filter, edit text. Osira. Clear, options, find short section, main, table. Osira, mute next message from Osira.
Mute next message from Osira. So if you find that you build some custom actions and they're just a little bit too verbose, there's just a little bit too much feedback coming from Osira, add a couple of these ones in throughout the custom action and it will just stop actions that usually report, like setting the beginning and end of time selections. It'll stop those from actually reporting. Normally you might want them to report, but in a custom action where you've got a string of them, it can be really useful to be able to mute that next action from Osira. Let's get back out of there
AP10 pause button.
and find another little edit we can do and show you another benefit to having all of the tracks automatically split out into items. Let's go through and find a spot where we're both talking at the same time, and I want to sort of let us both have our say.
I suppose that's... came into tech, right? Because T9 was tree. It was the only way for most
and-
of the phones. So
And Morse.
Okay,
K320 items.
now let's go back to the beginning of this
42K
item of
39.
Kyga's.
it was the only way for most
Yes,
of the phones. So
And Morse code was the first way to
way of texting back in the day, text entry. It was the only way for most
and,
of the phones. So
and Morse code was
so
and
Okay, let's firstly trim Kaika's item to
One item
there.
selected. Trim left edge of item. Edit cursor 8 minutes 21.941
Play
seconds.
that again.
text entry. It was the only way for most of the phones. So
and Morse code.
All right. Now we could probably, just trim a bit more of Sean's so and Kaika's end so that they're not talking over each other. But let's say we wanted to keep all of that. I'm just going to
G340, K320 items.
pick Kaika's item
41
again.
K 37 point.
way of texting back. So
And Morse
And really simply, I'm going to switch Ripple on now
Ripple to track. Ripple tracks.
onto all tracks and nudge this item to the right with the period. So push it further along the timeline.
Move item slash N. 42.157
Preview
seconds.
that.
so
and Morse
Move item slash N. 42.286.
so
and Morse code.
So now they're not talking over each other. Everything else has stayed in sync because Sean stopped speaking there. I'm not speaking there. So this item of Kaika's that I'm moving is the first item that's being moved. Because I have Ripple all tracks turned on, all items that start after this particular item are also going to be moved by the same amount along the track or along their own tracks to the right.
so
And Morse code was the first way to send information over a wire way back when, but we don't use Morse code anymore because it's in
Now I heard myself take a breath there.
G341 items. 47 GR.
information over a
There
wire.
we go. Remembering now I've got Ripple turned on because I was sort of doing that nudging stuff. I want to make sure I turn that back off again
Ripple off.
and hit
One
delete.
item removed.
So there's a couple of the basic editing techniques and the use of custom actions. If you do want these custom actions, please do reach out, garth@audio.pizza, and I can certainly send them to you. Now, this is not to say that these are the custom actions you should use at all. It's more a point of showing that with Reaper, we can set up custom actions that will allow us to speed up our workflows. If you find you're doing a certain sequence of actions commonly, then by all means, put them into a custom action so that you can complete that task with one keystroke. I want to go through the process of actually setting one up with you now. So I'll go into F4, into our actions
Actions.
list.
Window. Search filter. Clear. Option. Find section. Main. Table. Shortcuts. Key map. Menu editor. Add dimmed button. New action. Edit action. New action button.
And we've got new action here.
Menu. New custom action. Ellipsis.
New custom action.
Create custom action. Window. Custom action name. Edit text.
First thing here is a name. Now I'm going to call this bump item left.
Item. Left. Custom action. Bump item left. Insertion at end of text.
So what I want to do is say I've got two items on a track and there's a gap in between them. Obviously we can set a time selection between those and delete that gap, or we can cut one of the items, move it back to the left, get to the right spot and paste it. I want to make that gap go away without having to worry about what's going on other tracks. So, time selection, that would be a problem. Cut and paste is fine, but there's quite a few steps there. So I just want to push that item to the left until it gets to the next item edge. A couple of actions I'm going to need. Firstly, we'll assume that we get to the item we want to move. And so I'll put an action in first to ensure that that item is selected. So
Custom search filter. Edit text.
go back here to the filter and
Select. Item. Under. Edit. Custom action. Bump item left. Contents table. In table. Row 1 of 2. Custom. Select and split item under edit or play cursor. Synakia/SWS. Select items under edit cursor on selected tracks.
that one. That's what I want. So I'm just going to hit enter. Now that has put this from the first table, which is all the actions, into this
Out of table. Table. Row 1 of 1. Synakia/SWS.
second table. So we're just building up a sequence of actions. Now that's the first one. Make sure the item I want to move is selected. So now we want to move the edit cursor to the left until it gets to the next item.
Table. Bump item left. Contents.
So I'll go back up to our filter.
Custom action name. Select item under edit. Filter. Contents selected. Select item under edit.
And this is a item nav.
Nav.
Left edge. That should find the one I want.
Custom action. Bump item left. Content table. Row 2 of 2. Item navigation. Move cursor left to nearest item edge. Selected.
Yes, that is the one.
Item navigation. Move cursor left to edge of item. Item navigation. Move cursor left to nearest item edge.
Move cursor left to nearest item edge. That's the one I want. So I hit enter again.
Table, row 2 of 2. Item navigation, move cursor left to nearest item edge, selected.
Cool. So we've got those two actions in there now. And the final one that I will need.
Table, row 2 of item left, content select, custom action, item nav left edge, content selected, search filter, edit text, item nav left edge.
Search for, now it's an SWS action.
SWS.
So I'll put that into my filter. Gosh, what's it called? It's got edge in the title. Left edge, edit. Let's try searching with that.
Custom action name. Item left, table. In table, row 1 of 2. SWS, move selected item, S, left edge to edit cursor, SWS, trim/untrim item left edge to edit cursor.
No, we don't want that one.
SWS, move selected item, S, left edge to edit cursor.
Yeah, that is the one we want. So it moves the left edge of the item that is selected to the edit cursor. So I hit enter again. And if I go over here now,
out of
that table to our second table.
Table, row 3 of 3. SWS, move selected item, S, left edge to edit cursor.
So back to the top, I'll just arrow
item
up.
navigation, /SWS, select items under edit cursor on selected tracks.
So the first action, make sure the item that we are wanting to move, that we're currently on, is selected.
Item navigation, move cursor left to nearest item edge.
Move cursor left to nearest item edge, yep. I've just thought of a problem. If I have, for example, my edit cursor in the middle of an item, and I use this action, it will just move my edit cursor to the beginning of that item because the next item edge is probably going to be that one. So not actually what I want. So I might put an additional action in before this one.
Table, row 2 of 2. Zenaki, table, row 2 of 3. Item navigation, move cursor.
Yeah, so I'll leave my focus there and go back to my filter.
Table, item left, content, custom action, SWS left edge edit, content selected, search field, left
edge. Item.
Custom action, item left, content selected, table, row 12 of 12. Zenaki/SWS, row in table, row 12 of custom item edit, row left edge of items. Item edit, move left edge of item to edit cursor. Item edit, move item edit, shrink left edge of items. Item edit, trim left edge of item to edit cursor. Item edit, trim left edge of item. Item navigation, move cursor left to edge of item.
That's the one I want. Move cursor left to edge of item. So that's the one that's currently on, I think, Command Shift, comma and period. So it moves your edit cursor to the beginning or end of the item. In this case, we're moving to the beginning of the item. So I'll hit enter.
Out of table. Table, row 4 of 4.
So now I've got the action in there, but it's put it in at the end. I want to move it up to the second one. So if I go Command up arrow with focus on that particular action, I don't get any feedback, but if I arrow now,
/SWS, select items under edit cursor on selected tracks.
First one, so select the item where we are currently.
Item navigation, move cursor left to edge of item.
Move to the left of that item.
Item navigation, move cursor left to nearest item edge.
Moved to the nearest item edge to the left.
SWS, move selected item, S, left edge to edit cursor.
And move the selected item to that point. That is what we want.
Unticked, consolidate undo points.
And we'll tick that. So basically my undo, Command Z, won't go through each of those independently. It'll undo all 4 at once.
Remove untick, ticked, show as selected, active or in, OK, cancel, OK, default, button.
And I'm just going to hit OK.
AP test.
If I go back into my actions list.
Actions, window, search filter, edit text. Clear, button, search filter, edit text.
And what do I call it? Bump left. I'll just plug
clear,
that
button,
in.
options, find short section, main, table. In table, row 1 of 1. Custom, bump item left, selected, blank.
Now I currently don't have any shortcut attached to that action.
Out of table. Shortcuts for selected action. Key map, button. Menu editor, button. Empty, table. Add button.
So we'll add an action.
Less than type key or move control or greater than. Content selected, edit text.
Now I'm going to put that on Command, Control, Shift, left arrow.
CMD plus Shift plus Control plus left. Add button, actions, window.
Okay.
New action, but edit action, but delete, edit, new add button, table, row 1 of 1. CMD plus Shift plus Control plus left, close, button. AP test.
So I'll actually create a little test here who understand their clientele and are making devices that suit who understand they're made by companies. This is not going to make a lot of sense, but that's okay. I'm going to select that item. I'm going to
trim right edge
trim
item
it
to edit.
there. So I've now got a gap between the two things that I'm saying. Devices are made by companies and are making devices. I'm just pausing in the middle of that item. So now when I use my custom action, that should move this item back up to the end of that previous item. It won't make a lot of sense in context, but it's just a test.
7.206 seconds.
And are made by companies and a making device. Yeah, so that has worked perfectly. And now it doesn't matter about what state Ripple is, it'll just move that item up to the nearest item to the left. Note if there are other item boundaries on other tracks in between the one you want, you might have to nudge it a couple of times because the item navigation, to nearest edge left will move to the next item boundary, whether it's beginning boundary, end boundary, and on any track. Let's have a look at another technique of dropping some music in, okay? So we're going to jump back to the beginning.
0 minutes, 0.000 second, K300, G340, K320 items.
Kaika's track
Hello
here.
and welcome. Hello.
Okay, so we've got this
0.000.
section here.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Audio Pizza, where we're going to talk about the price of being blind.
Now, this is going
And
to
in
play.
price, I mean
Then I
dollars,
want...
pounds, rubles, and the like.
Rubles? And now I want the music to start playing and play for a little while and then have Kaika come in again.
Hello and welcome to another...
And actually speak over the music, okay? First thing I'm going to do is just clean up that gap.
2K 14.951.
I'm just going to jump back a tiny bit so I'm in between the two items, hit my delete silence across tracks keystroke.
11.636 seconds.
Rubles and the like.
Rubles?
Hello.
Okay,
Contents of time
delete
selection
all of
removed.
that.
2K 11.636 seconds.
Hello.
Again,
and
I've got my edit cursor right at the beginning of where Kaika's speaking.
S152 items.
I'm going to create a new track.
Track name. AP test.
I won't bother naming it for now.
4.
I've got focus on that track. I'm going to go across to Finder and grab the actual bit of intro music.
Audio hijack. Finder. Example. KWAV. Waveform audio. SWAV. Wave sugar zone MP3. MP3 audio. Copy sugar zone
There
MP3.
we are.
Reaper. AP test. Modify. 4.
Now Command-Shift-P to check.
Ripple off.
Ripple is off. I want to turn Ripple on for a minute.
Ripple to track. Ripple tracks.
And I want it on all tracks. And I'm going to paste that whole music file here.
Building peaks. AP test. Open project button.
Now, that's very loud.
1 sugar zone MP3. 11.6.
Let's just turn that down for now. I'll turn it down a bit. I'll take it down 6 dB.
Take mark 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
and the like.
Rubles? So now this goes for, let's see how long
1 sugar zone
actually.
MP3. 11.
So it goes from
0 minutes. 11.636 seconds. Port.
to
2 minutes. 5.531 seconds.
over 2 minutes long. So what we want to have happen here is for the music to play loudly for a little while, then for Kaya to come back in speaking over the music and the music to duck down. Now, lots of different ways of achieving this. Firstly, though, I'm going to do a quick and easy way of moving the items around. At the moment, because I had edit all tracks turned on, the rest of the
S152 items.
podcast,
K320
where
items.
Kaika starts
3K
speaking
31.0.
again, is
Great intro, by the way. It was very
way down
Hello.
here. So it's like
1 minute 57.221 seconds.
a long way down the track, a lot further than where we actually want it. I could select these 3 tracks, set a time selection around all of the items and cut them to the clipboard and take them back to where I want them and paste them there. Easily enough done. But I'm going to show another quick and dirty way of doing it.
S152 items.
So
Sugar zone 1 item. Sugar
go
zone 1
back down
item.
to Sugar Zone here,
1 sugar zone MP.
start playback. Pause for a second. Now I'm just going to find where I want Kaika to actually start speaking. After this, I think. Let's say we want him to start speaking there. Probably a little bit too long, but anyway, let's just go with that.
Sugar zone 1 item. Sugar zone 1 item.
I've got Ripple turned on at the moment, so I'm just going to split this.
1 item added.
I'm going to
2 sugar zone MP3 31.
delete all of that music,
1 item removed. Ripple all tracks is on.
and it tells me Ripple all tracks is turned on. So what have we got now? We've got all of those other items at the end moved right back up to where they were.
Hello, and welcome to another edition.
Okay, all very good, except for the fact now the music is gone.
Sugar zone 1 item.
However, if I
1 sugar zone
select
MP3
that and do Command L,
New item and set to source media end. 2 minutes.
item at send to media source end, I'll bring that all that stuff I just cut off the end of that bit of music back. Jump back a tiny bit.
Pounds, rubles, and the like.
Rubles?
5.531 seconds.
Let's skip forward a bit. I should have made that shorter.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Audio.
Okay, so we now have the position of those edits all sorted out. Note that I will have done all the editing on the actual voice tracks before putting the music in. Now let's do the volume automation on that music track.
Should design one item.
So jump back a bit. All right, we're coming into the very last bar of that section. So Control-Alt-V.
Show track volume envelope.
Show track volume envelope. Option L.
Volume envelope armed.
We've armed that envelope. Shift E.
0.1 value 0.00 decibels linear 0 minutes 30.
So we've got our first point set to hold the volume there. And I'm going to go and play.
Start on bar.
And pause.
Hello.
Yeah, it's where I want to be, basically. I'm going to do another Shift E.
0.2 value 0.00 decibels linear 31.347 seconds.
And now just take the value of that one down.
1.00 decibels.
So I'm doing 2 on the keypad.
2.3.4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.00 decibels, 10.11.0, 12.13.0 decibels, 14.15.0 decibels.
15 dB down. Let's see how that sounds.
Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome to another edition of Audio.
That's probably a bit too slow of a ramp there. But anyway, you get the general idea and the keystrokes to do the volume automation.
Pizza Kayaker here, broadcasting live in the early hours of the morning in the United States.
Let's say we want this to get...
Northeast border.
Let's say we want to get rid of this music at the point where Sean starts speaking.
Facing weather that you wouldn't even dream of.
Or in fact, at the end of this bar.
Floods. But anyway, I'm sure in the UK things are much better.
Right. About there somewhere. So
Should design one item.
just going to cut that out again.
One item added.
I'm just going to check my ripple state.
Ripple off.
Okay, I have it turned off.
2 sugar zone MP3.
And delete that.
Under the...
Oops, delete
One
that
item
item.
I'm sure in the UK things are much better under the...
Okay, so I didn't cut that off quite quick enough. Let's get rid of it more.
I'm sure in the UK things are much better. Things are much better.
Okay, get rid of that bit there. So again,
Should design one item. One item selected.
I'm going to do the Control-Shift or Windows-Shift period, or comma in this case.
Trim right edge of item. Edit cursor 0 minutes 49.
Trim the right edge.
But anyway, I'm sure in the UK things are much better.
So by then I want it to have completely gone. Now again, I could use some volume automation to sort of bring the volume of that section down, but instead I'm just going to jump back a little bit further. Shift A, and I've been using Shift A quite a bit actually throughout this without necessarily mentioning it. Shift A selects the item under the edit cursor on the selected track, or tracks if you have multiple tracks selected. So it's just a way of quickly making sure you've got the item selected that you think you have, so that the edit you do works on that item. Rather than doing volume automation here to fade this item out, I'm just going to use the keystroke that's on the Command Option or Control-Alt-O. Fade item out from edit cursor.
One item faded out from cursor.
Dream of hurricanes, rain, floods. But anyway, I'm sure in the UK things are much better.
All right. And there we have an example of how we can pop some music in. So after doing the editing and adding in any transitions and music and so forth, we'll go through and usually add a few effects to the tracks. Typically, this will be some compression and some EQ on the vocal tracks. Now, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go through the parameters that I would use for those effects. But what I will quickly do is give you a high-level overview. With EQ, first thing is really just to get rid of that low end. So maybe a high-pass filter down around 60 to 100 hertz, depending on what works. With compression, fairly gentle, so ratio of around 2 or less, quite a big knee, and maybe a threshold down around -20 works pretty well for me, given that I've already normalized stuff to -23 LUFS. I'll also often set up a vocal bus, which I can quickly show you. So it's not really going to be a vocal bus in the true sense, but what we're going to do is put all the tracks, all the vocal tracks into a folder and leave the music track out of the folder. I need to add the header track for the folder above the vocal tracks. As my vocal tracks are tracks 1, 2, and 3, quickest way is to show the master track, if you don't already have it shown, Command Option Shift M to toggle visibility of your master track. Focus on the master track. Command T to add the track.
Track name. AP
I won't
test.
call it anything. So I now have turn this into a folder.
Folder.
Shift Enter to do that.
G340, K320, S152 items.
Go down to Sean's
Nested folder. Enter folder 1.
and enter folder 1. So I now have the vocal tracks all in a folder,
Sugar zone 1 item.
and the music track, any other sort of swooshes and so forth, I'll put down here on this track. And then I can add
K3, G3, open folder 1. Master. Open folder 1.
to this folder here, to this vocal folder, I'll add additional compression here. So by putting all of those tracks or the vocal tracks into a single folder, it means I can put one instance of an additional effect on that folder and have the audio from those 3 tracks going through that same effect. In this case, a little bit of an additional compression. So I'll have, person-specific effects on each track. I might have different EQ or different other effects on my track versus Sean's track. I might have some deplosive on Kaika's track, for example. If I've got somebody who's got a loud environment, who's got background noise, I might have some vocal isolation effect on their track. So track-specific effects will go on the individual track, put all the tracks into a folder, and any additional effect that I want to apply can go on that folder. That way I can treat all of those tracks with the same final bit of compression before it goes on to the master track. So again, just to pull everything together and get it at a reasonable volume. Master track, definitely a limiter on the master track with a dB or 2 of headroom there. So the last thing I wanted to cover is quickly that final step of rendering out your actual podcast, your final file for uploading to whatever service you use. If you are wanting to have chapter markers in the podcast, you can set this up from directly within Reaper. The way you do that, if I go to the start of
0 minutes, 0.
this project, let's say I wanted to have a chapter marker here saying intro. Shift M to add a marker like you would normally in Reaper.
Edit text. Blank.
And we'll give it, there's a certain syntax you have to use so that when you render out the MP3, it becomes an actual chapter marker in the MP3 file. So if I put
Caps lock on.
I'm not 100% sure if I need caps lock here, but I usually do. And chap, C-H-A-P equals.
Caps lock off.
Turn caps lock off, and then I'm going to type
Intro.
Space.
Space.
So
AP text.
I've put a marker into the project at the beginning saying intro. And I can just go along, use Shift M to add markers wherever I like, name them with that format. Chap equals the name you actually want for the chapter name. And when we're rendering out the file, I'll just quickly show that part now.
Tab render to file. Set for per chap. Step for tick. Result intro poll.
Skip through a fair bit here.
Post block dim unticked. Metadata dimmed. Unticked. Add new metadata. Unticked. Metadata.
We want to tick this
Ticked.
metadata.
Unticked. Add ticked metadata.
Okay.
Unticked. Add new metadata.
And you can add additional lines of metadata as well.
Metadata dim format MP3 selected primary output format MP3.
And that's for when we're rendering out as an MP3 file. I'll just get back out of here for now.
AP text.
So there's a couple of options in terms of getting your level right. The goal I normally head for is somewhere in the vicinity of minus 16 LUFS. That's the sort of de facto standard for a podcast. Now, normally, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, I'll normalize the individual items to minus 23 LUFS. That's so that the audio coming from the items through the track is hitting those effects at a known level. That'll give me a good starting point by the time it goes through the track compression and then again that vocal compression, the vocal bus compression. That'll give me a good starting point to getting to around minus 16 once we have all 3 tracks together along with any other music and so forth. I'll do a test render, and there is an action. I don't think it's mapped by default.
Shortcut help on.
Let me just check. I have it on.
Calculate loudness of master mix within time selection via dry run render.
Calculate loudness of master mix within time selection with a dry run render. I've got that one on Command Option Shift U can't honestly remember if it's there by default or not. But what it lets you do is set a time selection optionally. If you don't have one, it'll do the whole file. It'll render it out. Everything will go through all the settings and all the effects that you have on the tracks and so forth, and actually calculate the loudness correctly for your final render. It doesn't create the file, so if you're sort of early in the process, or you just want to, select 5 minutes of the podcast or something like that to get an idea and do a quick render, this is quite a good one. And I'll give you a quick demo now, actually.
Shortcut help off.
I'll set selection start.
Set selection start.
And
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, 0.000 seconds.
go a few minutes in.
Set selection end.
Set the selection end and do my Command Option Shift U.
Rendering to file dialog. Dry run, no output. Dry run, 48,000 hertz. To dry run, no output.
And as it says, no output, basically it doesn't create an actual file that it saves on your hard drive anywhere. It just sort of calculates the data as though it's writing a file, so that it has all the information it needs to do a correct calculation of the loudness. That's finished.
Finished in 256. Render status. Table, row 1 of 1. In table, row 1 of 1.
And I'll have a quick look at the data here.
7.5.
So
10.9. 7, 0. AP test, row 1.
AP test, it's the file
1.5.
name. 1.5, that's a minus 1.5. It's just
AP
not
test,
reading correctly.
1.5.
That's the peak value.
0.
0, that's a count of the number of times the file is clipped. None, thankfully. We've got a true peak of minus 1.5, so it's all good.
7.5.
7.5, I think, is the momentary loudness. Minus 7.5 again.
10.9.
Minus 10.9 for short term.
14.8.
And minus 14.8 is the integrated. There's not sort of labels here to tell you which one's which, but you can sort of make sense of it if you know what you're looking for. Minus 14.8, that's a bit loud. Could be because I've mostly rendered out the section at the beginning which has intro music. If I picked a section from the middle, it might have been a little bit lower, but possibly I need to turn this file down a little bit before rendering out a final copy.
Out of table, stats/charts button.
And we have the stats charts button, which will give us, open up a sort of HTML of more detail.
Close button.
But I'll close that.
Repeat text.
So from within Reaper, we've got a lot of different ways and places in which we can adjust the volume. We know where we're currently sitting with that dry run render. One option is to adjust the item volume. That will sort of adjust it at the beginning, remembering that adjusts the level that goes into the effect that you have on the track. If you adjust it at the track level, it will adjust the level that it goes into that folder, and I could adjust it at the folder level and adjust the level that goes into the master track. So lots of different options, and just depending on what you're trying to achieve, you might choose one over the other. Just to really quickly show how I do it to items.
Open folder 1. K290.
If I go to Kayaka's track here, I'll do Command Option A.
219 items selected.
Now all those items are selected, and I can bump them up with Command Up Arrow.
Take +1 1 6 6.
It'll give a value there, but it's just giving one of the items values.
Take +1 0 6 6.
And I've taken that back down again. If instead I wanted to adjust the track volume, I can use Option Up Arrow.
Track +0.05.
And as you can see, that's a very small amount.
Track 0.
Option Shift Up Arrow.
Track +1. +2. +3. Track +2. +1. 0.
Is a more sensible amount. On the master track, you've only got that option to go 0.05 by default. And I can go up
Open
to
folder
that
1.
master track, and as I said,
Track +0.1. Track +0.0. 0.0. Track -0.
back to 0. If I was, say, a little bit too quiet and I wanted to turn the whole lot up, I could turn it up here at the master track, but I wouldn't typically recommend doing that. You would have to adjust your limiter to make sure you still had enough headroom afterwards. Of course, we also have
Open folder 1.
this folder now, and turning
Track +1.
that track up by 1 dB is turning up all of the tracks
K290 G200 end of folder 1.
that are within that folder. So lots of options, and again, depending on what you're trying to achieve and where the issues are, etc., you may choose one over the other. I'll just show you those keystrokes
Shortcut help on.
again. So Command Option A,
Item. Select all items in track.
and then we can use Command Up and Down Arrow.
Synakius /SWS. Nudge active take volume up.
We can use Option-Shift up and down arrow.
Synacius/SWS, nudge volume of selected tracks up.
That will go by 1 dB. And Option by itself with the arrow,
Nudge track volume up.
which you can also use on the master track, will take you up by 1/20th of a dB. So very fine increments.
Shortcut help off.
And just quickly, to do the final render, Command-Option-R, give it the file name you want, check the location where it's going to be saved. By default, if you haven't specified, it should be in your actual folder, the project folder. Ensure that you've got metadata checked to, if you've gone to the extent of adding chapter markers throughout the project, and render out your final MP3. And when you're doing that final render, as it renders out, you'll have a nice little table there that shows you all the statistics, the loudness statistics as they calculate, and you can have some confidence that what you've produced is at the targeted volume and hasn't got any clipping. Anyway, guys, I hope this has been helpful, and if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch. Garth@audio.pizza. Bye-bye.